Philip DeFranco just dropped Hasan Piker versus the Democrats? Yeah, I know. I gave him an 18-minute interview as well in the middle of it all. 47 minutes, about to be filled the goddamn. 45-minute Philip DeFranco. We're both blessed and cursed. Has been so long. Murat about to skip that video? True, he will. Anyway,
Piker's situation's gotten crazy as Democrats are divided and don't know what to do about him, and so we asked him. 8 million people marched against him as Trump didn't show up to CPAC and his approval just hit 36%. Every Trump-Iran deputy, he belongs in the party. Where you're seeing a divide. There's a big debate happening in the party.
Yeah, I did an 18-minute interview with Philip DeFranco on the Democrats divided
right now, with some candidates trying to embrace him and his platform to reach younger voters, and others thinking that he's just too toxic to touch. And that debate, it's getting pretty heated as we're in the primary season and with the midterms just around the corner. So one of the things that we've seen is that over in Michigan's Democratic Senate primary race, one candidate, Dr. Abdul El Sayed, announced a college campus tour next week that would include an appearance with Hasan. But then he was quickly condemned by the Michigan ADL, who accused Hasan of amplifying violently anti-Semitic rhetoric. Right now, Sayed's two Democratic opponents, they also slammed him, with Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow saying Hasan says extremely offensive things in order to generate clicks and views and followers, which is not entirely different from somebody like Nick Fuentes. And then you had Representative Haley Stevens also calling him the exact opposite of someone I'd be campaigning with. Right? And if you're new to this space and if you're wondering why Hasan's so controversial to these politicians, there have been a number of controversies, but in general, a lot of it appears to have to do with his very vocal opposition to Israel and comments that he's made about what's been happening with Gaza. Because many of his critics have accused his criticisms of Israel of turning into anti-Semitism. And there you have people pointing to Hasan previously referring to some Orthodox Jewish people in Israel as inbred, many also feeling that he downplayed sexual violence that happened on October 7th.
They serve in the military and then they get their untrained, inbred asses shipped into southern Lebanon. By the way, none of which justifies Israel's actions. So it doesn't even matter. None of this justifies that Palestinians have a right to dignity, a right to emancipation, a right to live free lives, free from this occupation. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if fucking rapes happen on October 7th. Like, that doesn't change the dynamic for me even this much.
Hasan also faced heat for saying that Hamas is 1,000 times better than Israel, which he described as a fascist, settler, colonial apartheid state. And one of the things you see continuously pop up is that he previously said that Americans deserve 9/11.
America deserved 9/11, dude.
With that, he since said that the comment was inappropriate and that he never meant that the victims deserve to die. But these comments, they still come up anytime a prominent Democrat appears alongside Hasan. And so in the last week or so, we've seen Politico running headlines claiming that some Democrats want to shut off Hasan Piker's megaphone. The Wall Street Journal also ran an op-ed claiming that some left-leaning politicians are getting too cozy with Hasan. But then also with this, you had Hasan speaking to a CNN correspondent over the weekend, and he defended himself, saying,
"It's a heinous smear, first of all. I've spent my entire professional media career and far beyond that combating anti-Semitism. I've been doxxed, swatted by neo-Nazis for my consistent advocacy against anti-Semitism. I just also happen to be an avowed anti-Zionist. That I think a lot of people cynically will say prominent critics of Israel are anti-Semitic. Are there critics of Israel that are anti-Semitic? Absolutely. I'm not one of them. I oppose and abhor racism, ethno-supremacy, racial supremacy of every sort. I'm against it. I'm an anti-fascist. I'm unapologetic about it. And I'm not going to compromise on that."
But also with this, the Michigan race isn't the only one where Hasan has caused tension. Right, he just interviewed Effie Phillips Staley, who's running for a congressional seat in New York, and she then faced a ton of backlash from Democratic groups in New York for appearing alongside him again, arguing that he promotes anti-Semitism and bigotry. But there you had Effie defending her choice to sit down with Hasan, saying, "By narrowing our tent and refusing to engage with platforms that reach young people, we are effectively surrendering a generation of voters to apathy."
Also, if you guys notice something here, all of the candidates that people are yelling at, and myself included, are anti-Zionists. And all of the people that are yelling at us are, at most, lightly defending Israel or directly defending Israel. How interesting.
Or the far right. And adding, while I don't align with every word Hasan Piker has ever said, we must recognize the massive value of a platform that engages millions of young people in the democratic process. And saying, as Democrats, our job is to build bridges, not burn them. And on display, you've had other Democrats seeing the issue similarly. Just over the weekend, you had Bernie Sanders being asked about Democrats swearing Hasan off, to which he said,
"Well, I've talked to Hasan, and I think he's, doing in many respects a very good job. The bottom line is that we have got to communicate with people. It's fine to talk to everybody you know in your neighborhood. People agree with you on everything. But I've been on Joe Rogan's show, as you understand.
You got a lot of heat for that.
Of course I did. And I disagree with Joe Rogan on this or that issue. But the last that I heard You can disagree with me, right?
Also, representatives like Ro Khanna, who's been on the show before, he's previously embraced Hasan's platform, with Khanna recently telling Politico that Democrats, they need to build a wider coalition, and quote, that must include engaging with Israel critics like Hasan Piker, as Pod Save hosts have done, and many progressive candidates have done. And adding, of course, I disagree strongly with some of his statements and point that out, but canceling people or shaming people like Hasan Piker, Sean Ryan, or Theo Vaughn is not the answer. Also, with all of this, you have some noting that when it comes to Israel, polling last year found that 77% of Democrats and 51% of independents think that Israel's committing a genocide. And so that's a big chunk of people who see eye to eye with Hasan on certain points. But still, you have many thinking that Democrats should run away. And so with this whole situation and debate just growing by the day, we actually reached out to Hasan Piker himself and some of the politicians who have been speaking out against it. And while we're still waiting to see if, we can get one of those politicians on the books, and hey, there's nothing shady here. It was short notice. It was this morning. But we did hear back from Hasan Piker today. And like we try to do on the PDS, especially with the time crunch we have, we put
PBS. He has PDS. We got PBS, Piker Broadcasting Service. Ladies and gentlemen, Piker Broadcasting is sponsored by you, the people, for you, the people. That's right, Piker Broadcasting Service. Please subscribe to the Piker Broadcasting Service, real PBS, at a time when the public needs you the most. Piker Broadcasting Service for tomorrow's news today.
out questions for him to answer, so they're on the record, and then you can decide how you feel. And we'll get right to that interview after the sponsor. You know what's deeply offensive? Fresh. I love Dan. To follow, which because on stage, Debbie Berry's by are publicly split. Into the news as promised. Here's our interview with Hasan. Hasan, Democrats are publicly split on whether you should be involved in campaigns, right? El Sayed wants you on stage. Stevens said you're the exact opposite of someone I'd be campaigning with. Slotkin said you sound deeply anti-Semitic. What is your response to elected Democrats calling you a liability?
I have the same attitude that Bernie Sanders demonstrated after his rally yesterday. It's I think there's a major split within the corporatist side, the corporatist flank in the Democratic Party, the people that are constantly trying to appeal to this like mythical moderate centrist voter, and that's been a demonstrable failure. And I think that the party's base actually understands that it's a demonstrable failure, so they're demanding more. And these guys they're losing their relevance, their institutional relevance, like a lot of these think tanks like Third Way and certainly advocacy groups like AIPAC, ADL. So they're just kind of trying to create pressure wherever they can. And I think they're very boomer minded because they think like when I go, every single comment mentioning your name on the videos, calling you a grifter, tanky, imperialist, some variation of that, definitely organic. No, normies are not going to be swayed by that and stand next to a politician that actually benefits me. They don't realize that like politicians are coming to me because I can fundraise for them in a way that you really can't do unless in a way that you really can't do because it's like all individual donors from all around the country, right? This is not like a closed door private dinner, $50,000 a pop. Like this is like real people that appreciate what the candidate has to say and want to give $5 to $100. And then also on top of that, I have a fairly active audience that makes up the door knocker base, as I like to call it, like a lot of activists, advocates, labor union leaders, and lower level local politicians and the like, who when they get excited about a candidate, they want to do phone banking. Like there is the real grassroots momentum when candidates associate with someone like myself, and that's the reason why they do it, because it doesn't give me any like significant legitimacy when I appear next to a candidate. At least it doesn't work that way on the internet. No one really cares, right? And in the same way that like when I get favorable coverage from a legacy publisher, it's good for the managerial class. They read those papers, but it doesn't actually yield a real massive amount of eyeballs and attention that translates to like viewership and an increase in like people tuning in to my broadcast, as opposed to going on like Theo Vaughn. So they're both the old guard and desperately trying to maintain that old guard mentality by like trying to apply pressure to politicians that very clearly are more malleable, more persuadable. You get a couple lobbyist phone calls or big donors that give a phone call, and then you release a statement like the one that Slotkin did, which was so crazy. Like she openly admitted that she doesn't know who I am, and then very clearly was like reading a talking point that was given to her, but maybe she didn't even like fully understand the talking about, because she was saying the conflation between Jews and Israel is anti-Semitism, is like very anti-Semitic. And it kind of seems like Hasan does that quite a bit. And it's like, No, actually, I do the exact opposite of that. So that was like a funny angle. It wasn't even like quote mining to be like, well, this quote seems crazy or whatever, because like they all do that usually. There's like a couple of them flying around that the ADL disseminates. But she didn't even do that, where she just like went off on a tangent on something totally irrelevant and unironically antagonistic to my worldview, something that I have for years and years pushed back against.
Well, especially as we get closer to the primaries, though, I mean, we are going to see these things coming out of like just people, you endorsing people or you being with people trying to use things that you've said and done. So we do have to talk about that while I have you on, right? Because you've been accused of calling Orthodox Jews inbred, comparing Zionists to neo-Nazis, dismissing reports of sexual violence on October 7th, saying, I believe the quote, and once again, it could be a clip, so we'll get to that. It doesn't matter if rape happened on October 7th. It doesn't change the dynamic of me, and posting that Hamas is 1,000 times better than Israel. Which of those things would you say you stand by? Which of those things would you say you regret? And which of those things do you think are being misrepresented?
I think the ones that are being misrepresented pretty egregiously are like it doesn't matter if rapes happened on October 7 or not, because that was actually an argument that I was having fairly early on with a chatter who was denying sexual violence or the likelihood of sexual violence happening. I was telling him that this actually doesn't change the dynamic of genocide. Like, this doesn't justify genocide at all. But that one has been misrepresented pretty egregiously. As far as the inbred comments goes, there's like a massive compilation of this out there of me like calling any kind of like ethno-religious racial supremacist an inbred, because a lot of these ideologies do revolve around genetic purity. But the idea that it's like directed at Orthodox Jews is ridiculous. It was specifically talking about like, settlers and settlers destroying aid and things of that nature. But I do understand that it can come across as insensitive. But so I will, as I told Politico, I believe, or the New York Times, I'll try to be a little bit more careful with my language there. As far as the differences between Hamas and Israel, I mean, that I do stand by. I don't have an issue when people point to that to say, how could you say such a thing? Because my counter always is, okay, well, then argue against it. Explain to me why Hamas is a larger danger to the world, or a larger danger to the Palestinians, or a larger danger to Israelis than Israel is. Because Israel has committed a genocide. I think that it comes across as like a statement that is out there, because it's not one that you hear from any American commentator at all. But it's still a reflection of reality. It's not even a defense of Hamas at that point. It's just it's a way to try to get people to understand like the severity of what Israel has done, and to also try to like make people understand that these are groups. Like, Palestinian resistance is not operating out of a place of like anti-Semitism in the way that it's been presented. It's operating out of a place of having an emancipatory need, right? This is 75 years of apartheid. It's a pretty brutal and pretty ruthless occupation that these people have been subjected to. This is not an alien force that's like outside of the Palestinians. I mean, they do have internal dynamics. They have Palestinians certainly are not all of them are fond of Hamas or anything, but it doesn't matter, right? Because like the much larger problem here right now is the genocide that Israel's conducted and the apartheid that it continues to maintain.
And the last thing I'll get to regarding anything in the past, because there's a lot of stuff happening now I want to touch on, and I know that you're kind of limited on time. It popped up during everything with Mamdani, right? You said in 2019, America deserved 9/11.
This is the largest circle jerk I've ever seen. Oh, no, dude. You're mad that Philip DeFranco didn't like consistently go, well, should you have not said that? Should you have not said that instead? Do you think that would have been a more productive conversation?
You later called it inappropriate. Do you still think that the underlying argument was right and that just the phrasing was off? And if so, what is that? Or have you moved off that position entirely?
No, that was me talking about blowback, which is a concept that has academic consensus, right? And even in 2019, it had academic consensus. It's just that the way the language that I used was certainly not the best, especially because it can be misinterpreted and still is being cynically misinterpreted to this day. But I think at the end of the day, it's people leaning into quote mining and to be like, this. I feel like it's just something I say about everyone regarding inbred comment is weak. Just say that it was wrong. Why? It's not. There's a 10-minute compilation of me calling like every white nationalist and white supremacist inbred. If someone is demonstrating ethno-supremacist, religious supremacist values, then calling them inbred is perfectly appropriate because it's like a genetic purity test that they apply to themselves. Like, why do you want me to concede on a position that I don't believe? You just want me to lie at that point, right? You want me to eat the L, lie for the optics argument. You want me to do what Zoran did. Initially, he pushed back against the globalized the Intifada statement with the truth. And then he basically caved and said, you know what? Yeah, I don't say it, and I don't think other people should say it, or whatever the fuck. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just apologize to Nazis for calling him inbred. It's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous. Person is not arguing in good faith. This is like an insincere person. It's a radical person. You said you'd be more careful with your language, but the risk of sounding like my guy. I'll always like how you say it, how it is. Yeah, I mean, it's the shortest possible explanation is that saying inbred had nothing to do with their Judaism in that situation because you use the term against all manner of people who have nothing to do with Judaism. So Jews self-centering and getting offended is entirely baseless. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's much faster. One thing I have noticed is that, as you probably also know, I collaborate with politicians quite frequently. Bernie Sanders, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. I have had Tom Steyer on the stream. Like I collaborate with politicians, especially in the primary season, but also in the off season as well. Greg Kazar, someone who I was a big advocate to win the Congressional Progressive Caucus leadership role, right? Like I understand the internal dynamics of the party. I talk to politicians all the time. I talk to analysts all the time. And yet this issue only gets brought up when I'm campaigning or when I'm working alongside Muslim candidates. Like the major blow-ups have only happened twice. First with Zohran Mamdani, where Andrew Cuomo was trying to associate me with like Islamic radical terrorism and then tie him back to that as well. And now they're doing the exact same thing to Abdullah Sayed. So I think it's in some ways a not so subtle, but certainly more subtle than like Randy Fine way of terror jacketing a candidate. Like to say like this candidate is platforming a person who black YouTuber is calling you out. What? Let me guess. Reheating my old nachos. Hasan Piker doesn't like black people. Thank you, chatter. Here, take a week off. And also, we will not be watching this video. I love that anytime I'm in the news, every single YouTuber, TikToker goes back into this like long standing drama focused manufactured outrage lines. Everyone has their own lane, you know, everyone has their own lane, but they all collectively press the Hasan button. Okay, go ahead. You know, I'm still here. Keep chirping, keep yelling. Okay, keep yelling about how I'm engaging in. I've demonstrated anti-blackness. Okay, keep chirping about how I'm a dangerous misogynist, anti-black, all this. The latest one that I think is really funny is they're saying that I'm like anti-Asian, you know? It's always the same nonsense. It's things that I've addressed a million times over, things that I've even apologized for in some instances. Why the f*** do you bring that over here? Seriously. He's just setting you up for a W. We watched it earlier on Sean's stream. The same woman then turned around and scolded a chatter for asking her to talk about Uganda. Yeah, I'm not going to watch that. I don't think there's any reason to give it any attention whatsoever. Anyway, these people do not care. They're not being sincere. Okay. How do you handle the pressure? I should put my head down and keep pumping. Okay. Who might be a dangerous radical, right? But it's ridiculous, especially because the issue that they're doing it on is Israel. And this ties back to the boomer mentality that I was mentioning earlier, because Israel's a 90-10 issue, especially in the Democratic Party's voter base, right? So they are weirdly aligning themselves on the opposite side of an issue that's a 90-10 issue. They're siding with the 10%. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, no matter how much quote mining they can engage in, or no matter how much they try to say like, oh, I'm a radical person, I think most people, especially after the last 2.5 years, kind of understand that this happens to anyone who puts themselves out there and says, you know, free Palestine, says they're on board with Palestinian emancipation, that Palestinians deserve statehood, dignity, sovereignty. There's always a barrage of hatred, down to the likes of Miss Rachel, who is an immensely kind person, like an impossibly kind person, who just simply says things like, I don't think children deserve to die, right? So it's ironically another thing that I talk about quite a bit as far as like the dilution of the term anti-Semitism, which is a severe crisis regardless. But this kind of dangerous conflation, this false conflation between Zionism and Judaism, paired up with like these barrage of attacks against people who are advocating for Palestinian emancipation and consistently calling them anti-Semites, pairing people like myself up with morally repugnant worldviews like Nick Fuentes. I think that is a spectacular failure in terms of combating anti-Semitism. I think it actually leans into anti-Semitism. It makes people no longer take anti-Semitism allegations seriously. And it also legitimizes the likes of Nick Fuentes rather than delegitimizes someone like myself.
So I was going to ask you, right? Because
embarrassing to say, but for years I heard vague stuff about you being a misogynist, so I kind of avoided, eventually pulled up to the stream because I was bored and curious, and now I watch you relatively frequently. If anything, I think this panic stuff backfires overall. The panic stuff wouldn't actually backfire if there was truth to it. The only reason why it backfires is because for every 10 people that say, ooh, I'm going to avoid this guy, I'm not actually going to listen to him, there's at least like 2 to 3 people that are new that go, you know what, I'm going to check this out for myself. And when they come in here, they realize that that was a lie, right? That's it. You can either try to find the quote that people are presenting and go 10 seconds 10 seconds after the quote or 10 seconds before the quote to figure out what the context actually is. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just like tune into the broadcast and you very quickly realize that I stand for certain values unconditionally in an uncompromising manner. Am I vulgar? Absolutely. Is this not the best presentation that you might be used to? Certainly, right? I do have a bro-y style and I do engage in vulgarities with regular frequency, right? That's true. I do that. That's me. I'm not going to change that. I can't change that. I think that would be insincere. I don't even know if I have the capacity to change that because I'm live for 8 hours a day. Okay? In my opinion, when you take the this is angle is much stronger than the apologetic explanation angle. Anyway, let's continue.
Larry McMorrow, she compared you to Nick Fuentes in that
Yeah.
you are someone who says offensive things to generate clicks and attention. That's a paraphrase of what she said. What's your reaction to being compared to a white nationalist by a Democrat? And do you think that comparison
I saw someone share a clip on that anti-black smear that Chatter tried linking earlier, but they did that thing where they accidentally included too much context and it made your point cogent? Yeah.
is being made in good faith, or what do you make of it?
No, I don't think that comparison is being made in good faith. I will, to be as charitable as possible, I don't think Mallory McMurrow knows who I am. I think she just got talking points and thinks that this is like a viable way to draw a line in the sand between herself and Abdul El-Sayed, because they're both in like the anti-Zionist lane. They're competing for votes in the anti-Zionist lane where the votes are, but then all the donations are on the pro-Israel lane, right? And Stevens is actually the pro-Israel candidate. She's the AIPAC candidate in this race. So it's very clear, you know, her position is already established, right? Everybody understands it. But I think this was McMorrow looking at the three-way race that's taking place. That's within a margin of error, and deciding maybe I can be the viable, Israel curious candidate here and try to moderate and maybe get AIPAC off my back. Which, we'll see if it even happens, because these are the types of things we have to pay attention to now. It's really strange. It's not even about policies necessarily. It's more so about like what kind of subsidiary corporations is AIPAC going to set up that will not have the word Israel in it at all, and how they're going to launch unlimited amounts of money. Because sometimes they are going to boost McMorrow, and sometimes they might even boost Abdullah El-Sayed. I was in the Tulsi Jimmy Dore Nico House crowd, and the argument was if you were a true leftist, you wouldn't have algorithm traction. The gaslighting worked on me until I started seeing anti-vax stuff and felt off. Years later, Twitch recommended Denims, and she undid their propaganda about true progressivism for me and gave me a positive view of you. Then October 7 happened, and I gave you a shot. That's so funny. I love how, because I have haters in every part of the political spectrum, even those who consider themselves to be the true leftists, even though they keep leaning into MAGA over and over again, like the Jimmy Dore crowd. Okay. There is some lane for everyone. If you're if you're looking for outside of the box thinkers or whatever, and you fall down the Jimmy Dore Nico House pipeline, and you don't realize that they're just like straight up serving you MAGA propaganda over and over again, you're like, oh yeah, that does make sense. He must be too palatable. Meanwhile, if you look at the real world, if you look at like the actual, politicians and mainstream news, and even on the internet, everyone's calling me a terrorist over and over again. It's so ridiculous. I first heard of you on a gaming website where the author referred to you as her daddy, so I didn't bother watching you. Then through the Palestine conflict, I started seeing clips, and now I tune in regular. I found your takes well thought out. Much respect. Hell yeah. A little bit. If they feel like there's a battle between Mick Morrow and Abdullah al-Sayed where like Stevens can win out at the end. So it's this complex machinery that I think undermines the principle of democracy. But, we'll be paying close attention to it.
Do you think that might be connected? I mean, you have AOC, Ro Khanna, other prominent progressives, right, appearing on your show, people like Bernie Sanders, backing candidates on the campaign alongside you. But when many of them are pressed on specific comments, whether it be about Jews in Israel, most of them won't address those comments directly. Like, do you think that the elected officials who associate with you publicly but won't defend specific things you've said, like, does that stand out to you? Do you think that's just playing the game? What's your take there?
I think I should never be the conversation. So I think it's totally appropriate for these politicians to be like, guys, there's going to be things that we disagree with. And there are things that we disagree with, not on the issue of quote unquote Jews, obviously, but like there are going to be differences in opinion. It's healthy, it's normal, it's understandable, right? So I think they're just covering their bases by being like, it doesn't matter if we have disagreements, I'm gonna talk to this person. I think they're just trying to signal it in a way that is like the most appealing to the broadest base. I don't expect politicians to just like run around and defend every clip out of context. They're not my fans, right? These are people that I work with. These are people that I want to fight for an agenda, and they are fighting for an agenda, so I support them. And if they stop fighting for an agenda, I will stop supporting them. But at the end of the day, this is an insincere conversation. So I do appreciate any kind of defense, because I understand, or at least they understand, that this battle is for who gets to retain control over the party, right? And I think they are just using me as an entry point. So when they're yelling at me and they're saying I'm radical, they're actually yelling at the base, because I do have a lot of fans, but I also am a megaphone for a lot of people who don't even know who I am, right? Like, these are people that I meet on the streets when I go to these protests. These are people that are totally outside of my demographics, that are also expressing the same anger and discontent towards the Democratic Party's ineptitude, its feckless nature, against the growth of fascism in this country. So they've arrived at my position without hearing my commentary at all. So I'm not this like singular being that is. People have no basic reasoning skills. Is annoying. I knew Hasan was cool before I started listening to him recently, because I already listened to podcasts hated by the same people who hate Hasan, like Chapo. I'd heard. Wait, Chapo doesn't hate me. What are you talking about? Are you saying that me and Chapo share haters? I'd heard him guest on other podcasts, but I only started regularly listening to Hasan Abishim at the beginning of the Epstein Fury. Glad to be here. Hypnotizing the base of support into demanding more radical things. I'm just a megaphone. I'm just one person, right? So for them to highlight me like this, I think boost my profile. It's rather flattering. It's definitely annoying that I have to like deal with all these, clips out of context, or just, I hate being misunderstood. I don't think anybody likes being misunderstood professionally. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of politicians also recognize that this is more so an ideological battle that's taking place in the Democratic Party. Are we going to have a left flank Democratic Party that represents the interests of the working class, or are we going to have a Democratic Party that continues along with this aesthetic posture against Trump, if at that places the interests of corporations over the interests of the people? And I think that's the real battle here. It's not me.
Well, on the note of your fans, and this will be the last question for you, there are millions of young people who watch you. They align with your politics. They feel deep, like completely locked out of the Democratic Party. If Democrats decide that you're radioactive, they cut ties, they keep pushing you, what do you think happens to those voters? Where do they go? What do they do?
I think we just go back to square one, right? I mean, that was like how it was in 2016. I don't care if politicians in general are just like, oh, I don't want to be along. I don't want to appear alongside this person. My commentary is not going to change, right? Like, this is not about my own personal feelings. Will it signal to me in some ways that like they are running scared, which I do think is a big problem with even some of our best candidates so far? Sometimes I think they are too conciliatory, too conceding to these groups that apply a tremendous amount of pressure by way of both the media and through direct phone conversations that they have with candidates. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, beyond that, it says nothing to me. I always repeat to my audience as well. I will have disagreements with even someone like Zoran, who I admire, who I love, who, I talk to with regular frequency, but there's going to be disagreements there, right? But at the end of the day, it's just all about putting the policy in the bag, little bro. Just put the policy in the bag. I don't care. We don't have to be friends. It's great. He's a wonderful guy. But we don't have to be friends. As long as you are fighting for the working class, I'll be there. I'll defend you when you are doing defensible things. And if you're doing indefensible things, I'll criticize you.
Hasan, thank you for the time, man.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And so with all that, I'd love to know your thoughts, opinions, reactions. What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? Why? And of course, looking forward, if we get a response from any of the politicians that have said things on the record, would love to get their comments and reactions as well. Right, and then from that,
what do we think? Did you guys get filled in? Meyer, who I why are there no comments about it? I wanted to see if there were comments. Having interviews on the PDS is one thing to include clips of people, but giving space to answer questions like this feels the highest form of journalism. Hasan Piker refused to endorse Kamala Harris, saying she would be just as bad for policies as Trump, and told his audience not to vote for her. He's literally toxic to Democrats, and his entire ideology hinges on the downfall of our current electoral system. Sort by controversial. This ain't Reddit, little bro. You can just do newest or top. Hasan has issued his commentary, but ultimately is incredibly self-serving in everything he does. He definitely has a worthwhile platform that could be helpful to Democrats, but he has many other questionable comments and terrorist glazing to answer or at least acknowledge. Try questioning him on a stream and you are met with his baby rage and ultimately banned as he refused to answer for his mistakes and terrible takes. It's so funny that these guys literally are still, it's 2026 and they're still doing this shit. Terrorism glazing. Yeah, you got banned. I'm not the one baby raging. You're still baby raging in the comments of a Philip DeFranco video. Ban chatters, but her chatters in the comments. The Hasan derangement syndrome is going to be absurd in the comment section. If you don't like or disagree with him, it's fine, but you can't say his haters don't act like lunatics. I don't think Hasan is anti-Semitic. I just think he's deeply unserious. Pretends to want change, but can't compromise on anything at all. And just about purity testing. Like when Moist Critical started speaking up about Israel, instead of being happy, he was just mad. That's not true. Literally, I gave him praise. Yeah, there was one person that I said, it was published 56 minutes ago, and isn't it like 45 minutes long? The comments aren't going to be people who watch for a bit. It's true. Hasan Bud, that comparison is closer than you think. That's why people don't want to associate with you. Maybe not as bad as a neo-Nazi, but for sure far, far left. I'm glad you were around, though. People that are so far one-sided or the other may actually make independent Canada possible one day. Who am I kidding? It won't. I'm so tired of Hasan dick riding. I agree that the left needs a major unifying figure. It is not Hasan by a massive shot. To simply paint Hasan's controversy as being largely because he's anti-Israel just shows you haven't done your homework. Hasan has done multiple controversy. Dude, this is... I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of this is the impact of like 8 years of steadily developing like a fuck Hasan clip complex. There are genuinely people who would just like, if they were to watch, there are legitimately people, if they were to like sincerely watch for a little bit, they'd be like, oh, I was just like, I misunderstood. Right. But they have a barrage of like, AstroTurf talking points that they could just like slam into everything. Yeah, these guys all love Zoran now, by the way. Yeah, they didn't. Jake Tapper CNN panel about you airs in 5 minutes if you're interested. New Kyle video on Hasan
so I don't know how
derangement.
many of you have been following this man, but the establishment, corporate, diet.
Yeah, it's only a crazy position because you accept the maliciously false idea that Piker is a genocidal anti-Semite. Anyone who's actually listened to the show knows that that is not true. And it's a particularly absurd accusation coming from supporters of Israel's mass slaughter in Gaza. Yeah. No, that's what it is. It's like people that have like deluded themselves into believing this nonsense, right? And they just continue along with this nonsense.
The government failed. And there's not a lot.
Oh my God, I can't believe Jake Tapper's about to have a panel on my ass, dude.
We're bringing many of those men in. We've already deposed several of them, and I'll name a name right now, Lex Wexner. We deposed him for several hours. That was a bipartisan deposition. The Democrats and Republicans both grilled our staff attorneys who were professional deposers, grilled Mr. Wexner, and we've released those videos. And, you know, he either couldn't record.
This guy's so comical. It's weird that these people are acting as they would become staunch Politburo party loyalists on the condition that you aren't the figurehead of it. It's just nonsense, bro. I think many people don't even know why. Many people don't even know why they hate me. And not a lot of them have like sincere ideological disagreements. There are some, like on the issue of Israel is very obvious, right? But for the record, oh, here it is.
Anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. So why are so many Democrats doing campaign events with him? We're going to explore that very question next.
Jake Tapper just straight up unconditionally called me anti-Semitic. You're a piece of shit, Jake Tapper. God damn. Just uncritically. God, what a Hasbro final boss. Yeah. Ugh, so gross. I think that might be legit grounds for a lawsuit. It's just, I'm a public figure. I don't think you guys understand that's like virtually impossible. Like it's not, and they know it too. That's why there's a difference between Jake Tapper saying that versus like saying that I've like shocked my dog or whatever. Okay, because the other one is like far more actionable than something as up to the personal interpretation as like claiming someone is anti-Semitic. You know what I mean? This link has less of a delay. All right, well, let's see. I'm excited to see what they do, though. Yeah, also, you have to show actual malice. Who's going to defend you on that panel? Is a Jake Tapper panel. No one's going to defend me on it. It's going to be like an American Enterprise Institute person. And it's going to be like maybe someone who's like a liberal Zionist. And both of them are going to be like, we really shouldn't have people like Hasan Piker anywhere near the Democratic Party. I mean, this is so insane. I honestly think Jake's little peepee can't fathom that you're younger, taller. Okay, no, it's just, let's see. They're trying to keep you out of the mainstream. If you don't fold to their framing, you win and enter, in my honest opinion. Yeah. It's going to be 4 vigorously anti-Assam people and 1 more tepidly. No, Jake Tapper midday is going to be 2 panelists, most likely. And it'll be like the American Enterprise Institute type of thing. It's the same with like when he did the Zoran piece. Remember when he did the Zoran piece to talk about how Zoran is?
Might not be a household name, at least among adults, but ask your kids. His new role as a midterm surrogate for some Democrats is proof that his political influence is expanding far beyond the streaming platform Twitch, where he has taken up residence. He is, without question, an online influencer with nearly 3 million followers. His rise as a prominent voice on the left is now driving a wedge between Democrats, and for good reason. Hasan Piker's past and present is checkered with controversial, if not outrageous, if not bigoted state comments like this one.
America deserved 9/11, dude. I'm saying it. We totally brought it on ourselves, dude. Holy shit.
The ultra-Orthodox Jews leaving Israel, hilarious. Okay? If they serve in the military and then they get their untrained, inbred asses shipped into southern Lebanon, again, very funny.
You know, it's Hasan Piker calling Orthodox Jews inbred. Piker has also posted comments such as these, where he unequivocally sides with Hamas, calling them the lesser of two Israels compared to the lesser of two evils compared to the government of Israel. Piker has since apologized for his comments on 9/11, but he stood by the rest. He's accusing others of taking him out of context. In a Wall Street Journal op-ed, the leaders of the Democratic think tank Third Way write, quote, "Mr. Piker is anti-American, anti-women, anti-Western, and anti-Semitic. No Democrat should engage with him. All should seek to push him to the fringe where he belongs," unquote. Hasan Piker just recently become an issue in Michigan. It's home to a competitive 3-way Democratic primary for governor. Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed, one of the 3 candidates and a former CNN commentator, announced that Piker will join him for 2 rallies in April. His opponents quickly seized on that, slamming the decision as unacceptable, calling Piker not somebody that you should be campaigning with at a moment when there's clearly a lot of pain and trauma across our state. Our Donnie O'Sullivan caught up with Piker over the weekend at a No Kings rally in New York and asked how he fits into the Democratic Party's future.
You have become an issue within the Democratic Party yourself. Tell us about that.
I don't think I'm necessarily an issue within the Democratic Party as much as I am an issue for a lot of consultants. I don't want fascism to win in this country. I don't want Republicans to win in this country. We can argue on the methods. Maybe you think that my worldview and my values and the policies that I want politicians to represent might be different than yours. But at the end of the day, I think we have the same goals.
I should note, I misspoke. It's a Michigan Senate primary, not governor primary. Jonah Platt is with us. He's the host of Being Jewish with Jonah Platt podcast. Peter Hamby is the founding partner of Puck News. And Peter, look, obviously he has said a lot of things that a lot of people find outrageous, and he called one Jew a Zionist pig dog. He has called Hamas the Palestinian resistance. He has justified October 7th.
That's
and on
true.
and on and on. What does his influence
I
tell
never
you about where
justified
the Democratic
October
Party
7th.
stands today? And I guess, is it despite those comments or because of those comments?
I think it's despite those comments a little bit. I mean, back to your first question.
He called
what it
one
says
Jew
about the
a
party.
Zionist
I think
pig dog is
Dr.
crazy.
Abdul Al-Sayed is
One
looking
Jew.
for a lane in a three-way primary. He is slightly behind in the polling. And like a lot of Democrats and a lot of progressives, after the 2024 election, wants to connect with young people, connect with young men, go into the manosphere, go into the podcast space. It just so happens that Hasan Piker is aligned with a lot of Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed's views on healthcare, on taxing the rich and billionaires, etc. He is a Bernie, AOC, Zoran guy. But with that, he has a long reputation of saying all of the things you just played here. I was just talking to you before the segment. I mean, I think it is a risk for Abdul Al-Sayed to have him come into the state. It's an obvious risk, but he is grasping for
This is one of the
votes
panelists.
in a crowded three-way primary in a state, Michigan, which you remember from 2024, both in the primary, the Democratic primary, and the general election, has a lot of Arab and Muslim voters outside of Detroit, in Dearborn Heights, and Democrats have been suffering there, and I think he's trying to grab onto them. He's doing rallies at Michigan, in Michigan State, so he's trying to go after young people. But one thing I do want to point out, Jake, that you said in the intro, that he's not a household name, the Speaking with American Men project, which was launched to study young men by Democrats after 2024, polled Hasan Piker's name among young men. He's not well known at all. About half of young people don't know who he is. And then his favorable rating, he's negative 9%. He's underwater with faves. Only 20% of young men have a favorable opinion of Hasan Piker. And that's sort of why I say, is it worth the gamble to do this?
Interesting. And Joni, in that Wall Street Journal op-ed
I
that I
like
talked
that-
about the think tank
I
Third
like
Way,
that
they
their
wrote,
new meta is
"We're
to
all for
say,
big
oh, he's
tent,
just
but the
not
Democratic Party needs
he
to
has
draw a
no
line in the
motion
sand. Hasan
anyway.
Piker and his fellow Jew haters belong on the other side."
He has
Tony
no
Sullivan
motion anyway.
asked Piker to respond to critics who call him anti-Semitic. He quoted a few things that Piker had said, especially a Zionist dog or Zionist pig, or I think the actual quote was Zionist pig dog, whatever that means. Here is Piker's response.
I've spent my entire professional media career and far beyond that combating anti-Semitism. I've been doxxed, swatted by neo-Nazis for my consistent advocacy against anti-Semitism. I just also happen to be an avowed anti-Zionist. I believe Zionism is a very racist ideology. It's an ethno-religious supremacist ideology, and it's the underpinning ideology that has caused the genocide of Palestinians in the hands of Israel and also the United States of America.
Jonah, there's a lot to unpack there. What's your response?
Yeah, I mean, what Piker does that a lot of people of his ilk do is they try to inoculate themselves against claims of Jew hatred by pointing it out in places that aren't them. He's been very clear pointing things out on the right. Oh, that's anti-Semitism. These are the tropes they use. And then he'll use the exact same tropes and just sub-Jew for Israel, which is the place where all Jews collectively have a connection to, and is the homeland where more than 50% of Jews on planet Earth live. So it's not, he would never say Jews control the media, but Israel controls the media.
I don't even say that.
The Jews didn't
I don't even
listen
say
to the
that.
war with Iran and control the American government, but Israel does. And so he's able to sort of get away with some of this stuff in these
I
subtle
love that these
ways
guys are literally
when
doing the
really his
conflation, by the way.
impact is
He
just as
tied
harmful as any
Israel to
out
Jews, and
out
then now is just going off.
anti-Semite. Just he's got a different name and he comes from a different wing of politics.
It's interesting. Politico asked a bunch of Democratic politicians running for president, or who might run for president, if they would ever do his podcast. And the only two Jews thinking about possibly running for president, Rahm Emanuel and Josh Shapiro, both suggested that they might be willing to.
I think this gets to something important with this debate in Michigan. It's different to go onto his podcast and joust over ideas. I think seeing Josh Shapiro and Hasan Piker on his Twitch stream would be fascinating. I think Josh Shapiro is smart and they would have a spirited debate, as we say in politics. The difference is going out to campaign with somebody and the candidate, it's implicitly endorsing his views or suggesting, why don't you come to Michigan and campaign with me? That's the difference. I think candidates should be able to go on to podcasts with people who disagree with them. But yeah, I mean, the politics of Israel heading into 2028 are going to be fascinating. You're already seeing tons of Democrats kind of come out against AIPAC, but also defending Israel. Gavin Newsom obviously had to walk back, calling Israel an apartheid state. The other thing that's a factor here, the more Democrats engage with influencers heading into 2028, they're going to have to confront some views, things they might have said in the past.
Quick one-sentence final thoughts on this. You worried about the direction of the Democratic Party?
I'm worried. I agree that they should be able to debate, but they have to come in clear-eyed and know that they're there to debate and push back on these bad ideas, not to get chummy and have a fun conversation.
Thanks so much for being here. Great. What a great time to be in LA to have you both in studio. Really amazing.
Thanks, Jay.
The U.S. Army is launching an investigation into this. Apache helicopters.
That's awesome. What a panel, dude. It's hilarious they have to use old photos, make you look like 2016 bro. I mean, I don't think it was that bad. Controversial opinion, I don't think it was that bad. Like, yeah, he farmed a lot of the, he farmed all of the talking points, right? But I'll take it, you know? Especially if they put my actual words against their claims, like their interpretation of my words, all of a sudden, that takes on a very new light. And that's the reason why the best they can do, and that point, that's the reason why the best they can do is say, oh, Hasan is actually anti-Semitic, but he's hiding it, right? Instead of being like, oh, he's a avowed anti-Semite, it's very clear. They have to go, oh, well, he's just like criticizing Israel, but actually he just means all Jews, which is an ineffective line of attack. And the other person has to basically concede on coming onto my podcast, but then say, but it's different when you have him on your campaign rally, right? They're trying to mitigate the harm there because like they've completely given up on saying this is a dangerous radical anti-Semite. They're trying to imply that, but then also simultaneously claim that they're trying to imply that while simultaneously trying to claim that it's okay if you collaborate with him. You just shouldn't have him on your rallies. Does that make sense? So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I don't think this is a bad thing. It is funny though that the Puck guy's assessment is that I have no motion and people that do know me hate me. He was like, no. We ran a poll actually, and nobody knows him. And the people that do know him, they hate him. Okay, they hate him a lot. Okay, then why are you talking? Then why are you bringing me up on a CNN panel? You know, if this is a no motion type situation, why is it that it's being discussed on CNN on the day that Israel has signed off on a death penalty sentence for Palestinians in captivity in Israeli concentration camps, and Itamar Ben-Gvir is popping champagne, celebrating that those concentration camps are now going to turn into death camps? I just felt like you were safer before this, and we want to keep you from this. Antifa worries? No, this is totally irrelevant. This is not a bad thing. Check my last message. If you were, regarding the anti-Semitism slander, if you were actually anti-Semitic, they wouldn't have included a clip of you defending your record of combating anti-Semitism. Anti-Semites don't care about combating anti-Semitism. Go ask Nick Fuentes if he thinks he's anti-Semitic. Yeah, exactly. It's just, in this day and age especially, anti-Semites don't feel the need to hide. The people who are anti-Semitic don't need to hide their anti-Semitism, right? Candace Owens is not hiding that. I think O'Sullivan interviewed you and Tapper was pissed. It took off because of his station, so he did this table to try to take you down a peg. Yeah, a little bit. Hold on. I think, like I said, I think Americans are much more aware nowadays of like exactly how people try to deploy defenses for Israel by immediately calling any of its prominent critics anti-Semitic, you know? So that's it. But see, you're hiding it by saying you're not anti-Semitic. It's a stupid gotcha either way. Yeah, it's stupid because I'm not anti-Semitic. The most anti-Semitic shit that came out of that panel was Jonah Platt literally saying all Jews have a deep embedded connection to the land of Israel. That is the unironic anti-Semitism. Okay?